And we're all set to go.
Okay, so hi, I'm Taraka, and let's start with the first presentation by David Peterson and Mohammed Zakaria, the diachrony of causatives slash applicatives and middles in Southeastern and Southwestern Kuki-Chin.
Is the video showing for y'all?
No, it's your background of your computer right now.
It is, okay.
Your name is Sand, I
do you
guess?
want me to just share it from my end?
Yeah, if you're ready, you can go
Yeah,
ahead.
let's try it. I think it'll work.
Okay.
Let's see. So I'm able to share, right?
Yeah, let me make sure.
Are you sure? Yeah.
I am. Yeah, now you are.
Okay. Hopefully this will work. Let's see. I'm also going to stop my. Oh, yeah. There we go. I'll stop my video in case it helps the internet.
Yeah, I may do that.
Can everybody see that? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Let's see here. Is that good still?
Yes.
Yes.
Here it goes. All right. We're starting.
Okay.
So does that look okay to everyone? So there is a handout for this talk, which is hopefully being shared with you via the chat. So feel free to download that. We're going to be talking about some patterns that we see in South Central Tibeto-Burman or Kuki-Chin, for which I give you a subgrouping in number one. We're going to be focusing on the Southeastern and the Southwestern groups, but we will say a few things about some of the other groups. And our basic observations include the following. Southwestern languages have a marker high, which marks causatives and applicatives. And if you're not sure what an applicative is, by that I mean a construction which involves a treatment of an otherwise peripheral participant as a core object participant. And things like benefactives are prototypical applicatives, but the otherwise peripheral participant that can be referred to might instead be a comitative or an instrumental or maybe some kind of locative or goal participant. On the other hand, Southeastern languages have a marker of the form either A or I, which marks predominantly middle events, although there are cases where it also has apparent transitivizing effects. And elsewhere, at least it's Central and Northwestern, there are potentially related elements that take the form of nominal plural markers, as well as verbal marking of participant plurality, and also a little bit of case marking. And to anticipate our conclusion, we propose a link between the valence affecting constructions that are tested in Southwestern and Southeastern. We believe the causative applicative meaning was primary and has developed into middle-like marking in Southeastern with residual applicative usages and lexicalizations. So at the top of page 2 in the handout, let me turn to the distribution. First of all, in Southwestern languages like Kumi, this typically has two functions, the element in question. So 2 for Kumi shows you high, a suffix that has a causative function. So G high at the very end of the example means they made him check, or they had the biggest brother check the traps. On the other hand, 3 through 5 in the handout show you various applicative functions associated with this marker high. So in 3, it's functioning as an instrumental applicative. The high refers to, from the context, some bamboo blades that are going to be used to chop off bear and tiger heads. In 4, it has a commitative function. It refers to a situation where tree shrew has taken a flute and is entering into his hole with it, the flute. So the flute is the commitative participant. In 5, a tortoise that's stuck in the tree falls onto a jungle boar who then subsequently dies. So hai is referring to the jungle boar as the goal or the locative that's associated with the falling, so the location to which the tortoise fell. Let's see, moving to a second Southwestern language, Ringmicha. Here there's a corresponding usage of hai as a causative marker, but it's actually relatively rare in Ringmicha to see used this way. More often in Ringmicha, you have instrumental and comitative senses. They're also rare kind of goal senses, but sentence like 6 shows you the comitative sense of this marker hai. 7 shows you an instrumental use of this. So some bamboo twine from the context is used to wind around a participant who then is left there swinging. And I just want to point out in number 8 that there is also an instrumental commutative case clitic, which is of an identical form to this element hai in Ringmicha. So presumably these have the same source. They must have come from the same place, given their similarities in meaning and form. I'm not claiming necessarily that one developed into the other, but they certainly look related. In Lemi, one last Southwestern language, in example 9, you see a hai used both as a causative in the first line and as a commitative applicative in the second line. So very well attested and very similar behavior among the Southwestern languages that we have data for. So I'll turn things over now to Zakaria for a discussion of the Southeastern facts.
Thank you, David. When we met in a conference on the advances in Kuki-Chin studies at SOAS in September last year, David noticed that the hai suffix in Southwestern languages might be related to the a or e suffix in Southeastern languages. So there were 2 papers which reported the function of the a and e suffix in Hyo and Sumpo respectively in that meeting. The a or e suffix in Southeastern languages can cover a wide range of functions. And I'm going to show some examples illustrating the function of the a or e suffix in Southeastern languages. The presence of the a or e suffix has been known for a long time in Southeastern languages. So Wolfenden mentions the reciprocal and reflexive functions of the show e suffix in relation to Taduki and Lushe in prefix. We do not show the functional richness of the e suffix in Sandwichin in this talk. Here we in 10, we have shown just a middle use of the a suffix. However, the function of the a suffix is not limited to marking only reciprocity, reflexivity, or middle only. The data in Houghton 1892 clearly shows autobenefactive and malefactive function of the a suffix in Sandwichin. So the example in 10 shows the lexicalized a suffix in Sandwichin. Now let's look at some of the functions covered by the a suffix in here. The straightforward function of the a suffix in here is to mark reciprocity, which is illustrated in example 11. Here you can see that the participants involved in the event are acting on each other simultaneously. Examples in 12 and 13 illustrate the reflexive function of the a suffix in here. However, the example in 12 demonstrates the direct reflexive function of the a suffix. The a participant in this example is acting on himself, while the example in 13 can be interpreted as the emphatic exclusive use of the suffix a. In this example, the a participant is acting on a specific part of his body by himself, but not someone else. The example in 14 and 15 illustrate the detransitivizing function of the a suffix. The verb ka in 14 is transitive as in ka, ka, ka. I really feared the school. The first clause in example 14. The same verb marked by the a suffix in the final clause in 14 is intransitive, which means to be scared. So the S participant here is scared to go to school because of getting hit and beaten by the teacher. The example in 15a shows the transitive form of the verb not, to know. When marked by the a suffix, the verb becomes intransitive, as in 15b, in which it means to be acquainted with. The examples in 16 and 17 illustrate the transitivizing function of the a suffix in here. In 16a, you can see that the verb om is intransitive, which means to sit. While in 16b, when the verb is marked by the suffix a, it gives a commutative applicative sense. So the a participant sits with, or in other words, marries the p participant, the old man. The verb lo, which means to come, is intransitive, but with the a suffix attached to it, gives a commutative applicative sense, which can be interpreted as to bring something, as illustrated in 16c. Now in 17b, we can see the goal applicative use of the a suffix. The verb pang, as in 17a, in its intransitive form, means to call out, while in 17b, it means to call someone. Okay, now in section 2.2.2 in the handout, we present some data from Sumtu. The verb si in 18, which means go, is marked with the suffix e, and it stands for to take. Similarly, in 19, the verb lo, to come, is transitivized by the e suffix. In both these examples, you can see that the e suffix has been used as applicative. In 20, we probably see a malfective use of the e suffix in Sumtu. So the clause in 20 literally means that my hand is blistering me. Final example from Sumtu, the example in 22 shows an impersonal use of the e suffix. Here, the literal meaning of the clause is beef makes me wanted. Okay, now we'll look at some die data. Herman recognizes this a suffix in die as marking agent orientation. The suffix is required by some reflexive and most reciprocal constructions in die, as noted by Hartman 2009. The examples in 23 and 24 illustrate the emphatic exclusive use of the a suffix in die, which is similar to one of the functions of the suffix in question here, which you have already seen. The verb for a in 23 means to work on one's own. In 24, the a participant's tooth is hurting himself, not someone else. In 25a, the verb share without the suffix a means to either use the spare himself and give it back afterwards, or to bring it to a third participant. And in 25b, when the verb is marked by the a suffix, it means the a participant has taken the spare for his own use without the consent of the owner and without the intention of giving the spare back again. It seems that there is a possible malfective sense here. So if we summarize the function of the a or e suffix in Southeastern languages, we can see that, other than the function of detransitivization or middle, the a or e suffix in Southeastern languages seem to have a transitivization function being used as commutative applicative or goal applicative. Over to you now, David.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Zakaria?
Yes, I can hear you.
I wasn't sure. So we've already essentially told you what we conclude regarding these patterns. So we think that the most likely scenario is that the original function of this element was causative and applicative in nature, and it has changed into, in the Southeastern languages, more of a middle-like marker, which has these retained applicative-like semantics and nuances to them. Let's see, and also some of the morphosyntactic characteristics of lexicalized things look much more applicative-like. There are some other possibly related elements seen in the other branches of the subgroup. I'm not going to say anything about Northeastern, but if you want to ask me about it, there are a few things to say with respect to those languages. The better evidence for something that's potentially related is found in Northwestern and Central. So Northwestern languages widely have a high nominal plural marker, which is occasionally also seen in post-verbal plural marking. So Delancey, in particular in a 2013 paper, pointed out the post-verbal plural marking in Moyon, which is, I believe, his discussion of it is claiming that this is related to these plural markers in other Northwestern languages. There are some problems with the initial consonantism in a number of the markers that are seen here, where some of them have an initial nasal, and maybe that reflects that this isn't the same marker as we see in the Southeastern and Southwestern languages, but maybe something else is going on there. In the central languages, we have in Lai actually a commutative marker in He, which reminds us of the high marker in Ringmicha, where it's an instrumental commutative marker. There are also some post-verbal plural markers in Lomtukrohan, as Ken van Beek and I'll talk about in our talk tomorrow. There's something which I think is probably reflecting the same thing as we see in Laizo, which is a high plural participant marker, again, suffixally. So this is probably related to the element, or well, not related to, but it's probably the same sort of development as we see in Moyon in Northwestern. And in Moraic languages, where the marker in Morai, I believe, is A in form. In Sentang and Zope, this marker actually has an initial H on it. So this is pretty clearly the same element that we're seeing elsewhere in the family. But regardless of whether this is actually related to the markers that we see in Southeastern and Southwestern, though, it's worth thinking about it because it's, you know, especially with the commutative marking in Lai, that semantics matches a lot of the semantics that you see in Southwestern especially. And there might be a way that plurality and the notion of commutative or even, well, are related to each other. So applicative causative polysemy, and we're now going to talk about the motivations for why we would see the developments between the Southwestern and Southeastern languages. Applicative causative polysemy is widely attested and usually involves a development from causatives into applicatives via, for instance, Shibatani and Pardeshi's notion of associative causation. A commutative applicative can develop from a causative. So if you're causing somebody to do something, in many cases you might be with them in the same location, and therefore it might transfer from a causative meaning to simply doing something together with someone meaning, which is what a commutative applicative does. Inanimate causes can also be reinterpreted as instrumental applicative objects. So if you plow, if you cause a hoe to plow the field, then it's very similar to using the hoe to plow the field. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I've gotten lost in the handout here. So it might strike you as odd, though, that a applicative construction might develop into a middle construction or some kind of detransitivizing construction. But recently, Malchukov has called attention to instances of applicative antipassive polysemy. So we see a relationship between applicatives which are in their basic sense transitivizing, and antipassive, which are in their basic sense detransitivizing. So he cites as a motivation for this the observation that applicatives of transitives share the feature of P demotion with antipassives. So normally in an applicative construction, you take a peripheral entity and treat it as a core object entity. But if you already had associated with the basic verb an object entity, quite often the applicative will kick that participant out of the core and into the periphery. It'll treat it as a peripheral entity, and that's essentially what an antipassive does. So I think Malchukov's idea is that applicatives might focus on one of the functions, which is bringing a peripheral entity into the core, or they might focus on another possible characteristic of the construction, which is removing a P participant from the core. And he looks at these in a number of languages, the clearest data of which I think is from Chukchi. So in Chukchi, there is a locative applicative that's marked by this prefix enna. So if you look at the locative participant in 26A, you see that it's marked with a locative suffix, but in 26B, it's actually treated as a nominative, or I think Malchukov actually means an accusative, or sorry, an absolutive here. So that's a locative applicative suffix, or sorry, prefix. And in Chukchi, the antipassive is actually marked by the same prefix. It doesn't look quite the same because of vowel harmony facts in Chukchi, but between the A sentence and the B sentence is giving a peripheral or an oblique treatment to the load there. My internet connection is unstable. Is that all right? See, I'm okay?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Carry on.
And then
1 minute.
you can compare the 27B sentence to 27A, where the load is treated as a nominative or an absolutive, so in a normal transitive clause. So another possible motivation for what's going on in Southwestern and Southeastern is, on the other hand, a proposal by Crezel and Nouguier-Voisin for an element in Wolof. So they posit a proto-element E, which indicates co-participation to account for, among other things, the polysemy of this marker, which gives you instrumental applicatives, reciprocals, and antipassives, or deobjectives is maybe a better characterization of them, but they refer to them as antipassives in their study. And it's possibly present in other middle and causative markers in Wolof. So the instrumental applicative usage is seen in example 28 and 28b, in fact. 29 shows you the deobjective or antipassive usage of it. So where mat is actually a transitive verb, but in this context, it's used intransitively. And then in at least some reciprocals occurs, as in this example with mix, kind of a middle usage there. So it seems that there is some cross-linguistic that, on the one hand, applicatives may evolve into detransitivizing constructions, and alternatively, a marker of co-participation may be able to develop into disparate constructions involving either transitivization or detransitivization, as we see in Wolof. So this latter scenario is, I think, interesting because it might allow us to pull in the usages of this marker in the other languages that we've talked about, where it's marking plurality in participant marking and just plurality in general. So we're about out of time or over time already, so let me just conclude with some implications for subgrouping. So as I've already alluded to, we think it seems unlikely that the development in Southwestern and Southeastern of an applicative from this element is a parallel development. Another observation is that unlike other markers of causatives and applicatives in the language, this particular one doesn't appear to occur elsewhere in the family as in a valence affecting context. So it's just in Southeastern and Southwestern that this high element seems to have been brought in to affect valence. And this probably shared innovation would thus appear to be a potential argument for subgrouping Southwestern and Southeastern languages together, for which there otherwise is only sparse evidence, their geographic proximity notwithstanding. So with that, we'll entertain questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So hopefully everybody saw that okay.
Yeah.
That's just fine.
Scott, I hear your voice.
Yes. I see my face too. Very interesting all the way through. I'm not totally convinced by your last point, right?
The subgrouping point.
The subgrouping point.
Yeah.
Because it's clear these languages are so closely related that it's not that far back that they were mutually intelligible, which means that sort of shared grammaticalization, well, a grammaticalization like that is something that can spread. It starts out as an idiom, and as an idiom, it's easily copied. And so I think it's probably the same kind of evidence as shared lexical innovation, but maybe not automatically more reliable than that.
Well, I've long been a detractor from the notion that there's a Southern Chin subgroup, so I wouldn't be too unhappy about that conclusion. But I would say compared to, everybody can hear me, right? I would say compared to other applicative constructions and causatives in the family, they seem really, those seem a lot more transparent than this particular set of constructions. So, and that's, it feels different from the others, which, I mean, I don't believe that we should reconstruct a benefactive, well, we probably should reconstruct a benefactive applicative construction to Proto-Kuki-Chin.
No,
However, I wouldn't imagine that the presently attested benefactive constructions reflect that, because the benefactives are just so common, and I mean other applicatives are common too. I mean, especially commutatives and instrumentals, and so yeah, it's the most convincing thing that I've seen that makes me feel like I want to say that Southern languages are more closely related to each other, just because of its oddity and because it's not attested elsewhere in the family. And the scenario you're talking about, Scott, where you've got a, say, aerial spread of a construction, I think that Hyo has actually a number of applicative constructions. So Zakaria, you can say more about this. There's a commutative, there's a
Yeah, associative benefit with that I call we and not,
right, yeah,
we not.
And I mean, so the P vowel commutative applicative is attested all over the place, but that one is one that easily could have spread into to Hyo from when they were living further to the southeast, from Dai, you know, or from, you know, and it might have spread into Dai from central, as far as I know. So, so that one feels like it is a spreading type of applicative construction. But this other one is it's really idiosyncratic in Southeastern. Is the main thing. Zakaria, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, you know, it does a lot of weird stuff, and sometimes it's not, you know, clear from the data what it is doing, unless you know, have good time with the consultant and get the meaning. So yes, it's, as David said, it's kind of idiosyncratic, and it depends on the context and, you know, situation. How do you want to interpret when the A is attached to a verb?
So when I look at Hyo, I think, oh, maybe they had this as a applicative construction, causative applicative construction earlier, and they, well, I don't know why they would have a causative though, because they have this other causative, the Saka causative, which is all over the place and looks, you know, I mean, I hate to think that is a, you know, a grammaticalization just independently all over the family, but I guess it can be, because anyway, yeah, I mean, but it seems like Hyo, it developed this causative applicative into something else you know, this quasi-middle
Yeah.
super idiosyncratic thing, and then it needed to get some applicative constructions from somewhere else. So it took them from die or whatever. I don't know, because its applicative constructions look just like die's applicative constructions otherwise.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
See, pretty
Yeah.
close. A lot of overlap anyway.
Also with the SUM2 and here data, like low A and CA, take with bring and go with these two verbs.
So I think we're out of time, but if Mary's nice, she might give us one more question. We've been.
I feel like it's more up to Scott, right?
I got more time than I need. Go ahead.
The floor is yours. So if you choose to give it to David, that's you.
Sure.
Are there more
Anything
questions?
else?
Well, I was just curious then, so is this applicative, this is not a real question, but I'm just wondering then, are we calling this thing a middle? The thing that's the causative applicative? Because we don't.
See?
Well,
That's your call.
I don't see much of commutative applicative use of the a suffixing here. There are, I just see the 2 or 3 verbs that can be interpreted as being used as commutative applicative sense. But in most of the cases, you find in middle type of situations the a suffixing here.
They're not common enough to, okay.
Yes.
So we should yield the floor to Scott.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.